In a world of glass towers and steel frames, it's easy to overlook the humble brick. But if we slow down and take a closer look, we'll find a story thousands of years in the making. This is the long history of bricks, a journey from mud to walls. So what is a brick? At its core, a brick is a simple rectangular block, most often made from clay. Its purpose? To build walls, homes, temples, even cities. The genius of the brick lies not in complexity, but in reliability. Bricks are strong, stackable, repeatable, each one small enough to hold in your hand, yet powerful enough to shape a civilization. Traditionally, bricks are shaped from a mixture of earth, mostly clay, formed into a block and then hardened. This hardening can be done by drying under the sun or by firing in a kiln. The dimensions have changed over time, but the principle remains. Long enough to span a wall, thick enough to support weight, and just heavy enough to feel real. Think of a brick as more than just a building material. It is the distilled symbol of human effort, a tiny piece of hardened earth, transformed through fire and form into something that lasts, something that connects us, wall by wall, city by city, across time and space. From ancient deserts to modern metropolises, bricks have sheltered us. They've warmed us in winter, shaded us in summer. Their regular shapes have given rise to clean lines, sturdy walls, and timeless designs. It is no exaggeration to say that bricks helped build the world we live in. But where did this all begin? To understand the brick's story, we must travel back, far back, to the ancient river valleys of Mesopotamia, where humans first molded the earth beneath their feet into something enduring.
Thousands of years ago, long before steel or glass, humanity found something simple and transformative. In the ancient river valleys of what we now call the Middle East, people discovered that the very ground beneath their feet could be shaped and hardened. This was the beginning of the brick. Around 7000 BCE, early humans learned that if they mixed clay-rich soil with water, it became thick and moldable. Not too wet, not too dry, just right to be shaped. When left in the sun, this mud would harden into a solid block. What they made wasn't rock, but it was close enough. These first bricks weren't perfect. They were made by hand, pressed into wooden frames, or simply shaped by palm and fingers. Then, carefully laid out under the open sky to dry for days, maybe even weeks. A sudden rain could destroy a whole batch. But with patience, the mud became something else, something new. We call them adobe bricks today. Sun-dried and air-hardened, they were fragile but surprisingly useful. especially in arid places like Mesopotamia. They could crumble in the rain, but when kept dry, they could last for generations. And they were everywhere. With these bricks, people started building not just homes, but neighborhoods. Simple huts gave way to larger rooms. Rows of rooms became settlements, and those settlements became cities. The humble mud brick made urban life possible. In ancient Mesopotamia, along the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, massive structures rose from mud. Ziggurats, giant step temples, were stacked from millions of these sun-baked bricks. They weren't beautiful, but they were monumental, and they reached for the heavens. Making bricks was slow, tiring work. Dig, mix, press, dry, stack. Dig, mix, press, dry, stack. It was a rhythm, a ritual, a shared act of building repeated across generations. It's likely that children, elders, and whole families helped form the very walls they lived inside. The rectangular shape of bricks allowed for clean lines. When every unit is the same size, it becomes easy to plan, to organize. Streets lined up, courtyards formed. Even without writing, the brick taught early humans how to think in systems. Of course, sun-dried bricks weren't perfect. Over time, wind and water would wear them down. But for their moment in history, they were revolutionary. For the first time, humans weren't just using nature, they were reshaping it. Even today, in parts of the world, people still build with sun-dried mud bricks, the same way it was done 9,000 years ago. Hands in the soil, water from the river, molds in the sun. The method endures, the material endures. A brick begins with earth, not steel, not concrete, just dirt. And in that dirt lies everything we need to build. The most important part, clay. A soft, sticky soil that has shaped more than just bricks. It has shaped civilizations. Clay is a natural marvel. It holds water. It bends. It stretches. When wet, it molds like dough. When dry, it holds its shape. And when fired, it becomes stone, flexible, durable, ancient. That's why we keep coming back to it. Most early bricks weren't made from pure clay. They were made from mud, a mix of clay, silt, sand, and water. Each region had its own recipe depending on what was under their feet. No two muds were quite the same, and that made every brick unique. Sand and silt may seem like filler, but they're critical. Too much clay, and the brick might crack while drying. Too little, and it won't hold shape. Getting the balance right was something ancient builders knew by feel, not by formula. To make bricks tougher, people added straw, chaff, or crushed plant fibers. These tempering agents stopped cracks from growing. They helped bricks breathe. Sometimes you can still see tiny strands in thousand-year-old bricks, a reminder of the hands that made them. In Mesopotamia, the mud was rich and sticky, perfect for large temple bricks. In Egypt, sandier soil led to lighter, faster drying bricks for homes and granaries. Builders didn't import ingredients. They built with what they had. That's why every region's bricks look and feel a little different. Color wasn't just decoration. It came from the minerals in the clay. Iron turned bricks red. Lime made them pale yellow. Ashy soils turned bricks gray or brown. Across time and culture, these colors became part of the identity of cities themselves. Today, we test bricks in labs, but in the past, they tested with time. Did the brick crack in summer heat? Did it crumble in winter rain? If it survived a year, it could survive a lifetime. That was their science, learned through patience, not numbers. Early bricks were not extruded from machines. They were pressed into wooden molds, shaped by foot or palm, and carefully stacked to dry. The clay stuck to fingers. The straw stuck to skin. It was labor, but it was also art. Every brick tells a story of the soil beneath it, the people who made it, and the climate it was born in. Clay, mud, straw, sand, simple things, but combined just right. They become something stronger than stone. They become home. Turning soft mud into a hardened brick seems like magic, but it's not. It's fire and patience. From the moment early humans discovered clay could hold shape, they asked, how do we make it last? The answer at first was simple. Let the sun do the work. Bricks were laid out under the open sky, drying slowly over days. No tools, no fire, just air and heat. In dry regions, this method was enough. It gave rise to whole cities. But these sun-dried bricks had limits. One storm and a wall could melt into the earth. They were soft, vulnerable, perfect for deserts, terrible for rain, fragile foundations for brave new civilizations. We still use a word for them today: adobe. Adobe bricks are ancient, but not extinct. Even now in parts of the world, people still dry bricks in the sun, just as their ancestors did. Tradition hardened by sunlight. But as architecture rose higher, the sun alone wasn't enough. Enter the kiln, a fireproof oven, a chamber of transformation. Early kilns were simple: clay domes, holes for fuel, and vents for smoke. But the results? Remarkable. Inside a kiln, bricks face temperatures up to 1,000 degrees Celsius. The clay baked, the water vanished. The answer at first was simple: let the sun do the work. Bricks were laid out under the open sky, drying slowly over days. No tools, no fire, just air and heat. In dry regions, this method was enough. It gave rise to whole cities. The mud became something else entirely: stronger, denser, weatherproof. Fire turned dirt into durability. Wood was the first fuel, but in time, people used charcoal, dried animal dung, even straw bundles. Whatever burned hot and long, the firing process had to be watched carefully. Too hot, bricks shattered. Too cold, they stayed soft. Brick making became part chemistry, part craft. As demand grew, so did the kilns. Small pits became chambers. Chambers became towers. Whole villages worked together to feed the fire, night and day. Brick making was no longer a personal task. It was a community endeavor. Fired bricks changed everything. Now, buildings could stand taller. Walls could withstand storms. Temples could endure centuries. What began as a soft ball of earth became legacy. Whether baked by sun or forged by fire, bricks served one purpose: to shelter. One method was old, the other revolutionary, but both began the same way, with mud, hands, and the desire to build something that lasts. If the brick is one of humanity's oldest tools, then it is also one of our greatest. The rise of civilization itself. Cities, temples, fortresses was shaped quite literally by bricks. In Mesopotamia, along the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, mud bricks ruled. Massive ziggurats, stepped pyramids reaching toward the heavens, were stacked brick by brick, layer by layer. No metal, no cement, just earth, sun, and time. Bricks built everything in Mesopotamia. Homes, temples, storage rooms, even city walls stretching miles across the plains. Some bricks were stamped with the names of kings, proud marks on soft clay that hardened into history. Meanwhile, to the east in the Indus Valley, another brick culture rose. Cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa were planned with astonishing precision. Their bricks, standardized to exact proportions, 4:1. This wasn't random building, it was urban engineering. These ancient cities had straight streets, public baths, and advanced drainage systems, all laid out with brick. Brick wasn't just a material, it was a mindset, order, geometry, control. In Egypt, the story of bricks took a different shape. Stone was for the gods, but for everyday life, homes, granaries, palaces, Egyptians used mud bricks, made by the millions, dried in the desert heat. They built a civilization by the Nile. Egyptian bricks often included straw or chopped reeds, binding agents that made them lighter, less likely to crack. Some bricks still bear fingerprints or even paw prints from stray animals that walked across the drying clay. A small moment frozen for thousands of years. In all three civilizations, Mesopotamia, Indus Valley, Egypt, bricks brought something more than shelter. They brought rhythm, repetition, a unit of order in a chaotic world. Something that could be stacked, shaped, aligned. Brick wasn't just functional, it was symbolic. The bigger the building, the better the bricks. Kings and priests built with precision, while farmers shaped simpler forms. You could read a society's values by the way they built with brick. Thousands of years later, many of those ancient bricks still remain, not in museums, but in the ruins of cities they once held up. Each one tells a story of early genius and a shared truth. Civilization begins with the brick. When Rome expanded, it didn't just bring armies and roads, it brought bricks. Bricks that were stronger, flatter, and smarter than ever before. Bricks that could build not just houses, but empires. Roman bricks were longer and thinner than earlier forms. They were stamped with the name of the legion or workshop that made them, a mark of origin, a sign of quality. And across the empire, those marks told a story of scale and standardization. The Romans perfected the use of kilns. Firing techniques became more consistent. The result, bricks that were nearly identical, batch after batch. With that consistency came speed. With speed came cities. Roman engineers had a secret weapon, concrete. But concrete alone wasn't enough. Bricks gave it form, structure, skin. Brick and concrete working together made arches, vaults, domes, and dreams. Consider the baths of Caracalla, one of the largest public buildings ever built in antiquity. Beneath its marble floors and mosaic walls, millions of bricks, hidden, supporting, essential. Roman bricks traveled as far as the empire itself. From England to Syria, you'll find the same style, the same shape, the same strength. It was a network of knowledge, fired into clay. Even Roman legions made bricks. When soldiers built forts, they made their own materials. Discipline applied to architecture. Precision wasn't just for warfare. It was for walls. Bricks weren't just structural. They could also be beautiful. Roman architects layered bricks in patterns, zigzags, herringbone, diamonds. They gave plain walls rhythm and texture, beauty from repetition. So much of what Rome built was covered in plaster, marble, or paint. But beneath it all was brick, unseen, uncelebrated, but utterly essential, like the skeleton beneath a sculpture. And today, many Roman bricks still exist, still stamped, still red, still strong. In ancient walls and forgotten ruins, they remind us Rome wasn't just built in a day. It was built brick by brick. When the Roman Empire collapsed, much was lost. Cities faded, roads crumbled, and brick-making nearly disappeared, but not forever. In time, across medieval Europe, the art of brick returned, slower, smaller, but still alive. Without Roman factories, brick production became local. Each region used its own clay, its own size, its own methods. A brick from Germany looked nothing like one from Italy, but everywhere, bricks came back.
As the craft returned, so did the craftsmen. Brickmakers formed guilds, groups that protected trade secrets, trained apprentices, and set the rules. Who could make bricks? How? And at what quality? The guilds decided. These guilds weren't just clubs, they were institutions. They inspected kilns, regulated prices, and kept the art of brick making alive, one generation at a time. Without massive kilns, bricks were fired in clamps, stacks of raw bricks with layers of fuel. These were smoky, slow, and uneven, but they worked, and every finished brick felt like a small victory. Some of the greatest brick buildings of the Middle Ages weren't homes, they were cathedrals. In regions like northern Germany and Denmark, builders used red bricks to shape Gothic towers, arches, and spires. Brick became divine. Builders played with bricks like artists. They arranged red and black bricks in patterns, diamonds, stripes, zigzags. These weren't just walls, they were murals. In medieval towns, bricks weren't just about building, they were about status. The poor lived in timber or mud. The rich, they built in brick. Warm, permanent, proud. A medieval brickmaker worked by hand, shoveling clay, mixing straw, pressing each form, day after day, year after year. It was slow, hard, dirty, but for many it was a calling, not just a job. From master to apprentice, the flame of knowledge passed. Techniques were not written down. They were shown, repeated, remembered. And because of that quiet tradition, the brick lived on. The Industrial Revolution changed everything. Cities rose, machines roared, smoke filled the skies, and quietly in the background, the humble brick was changing too. For thousands of years, bricks were shaped by hand. But in the 1800s, machines took over. Clay was pressed, cut, and molded with steam-powered speed. A task that once took hours now took seconds. Brick-making moved from fields to factories. Massive yards filled with workers, smoke and steel. Stacks of bricks stretched into the distance, ready to build the new industrial world. One invention changed brick production forever.
the continuous kiln. Bricks moved through fire on conveyor belts, cooking non-stop. No cooling, no pauses, just heat, precision, progress. Bricks no longer stayed local. With trains, they traveled from countryside kilns to urban construction sites. Cities like London, Chicago, and Berlin were built brick by brick, hauled in by steam and steel. With mass production came standards. Bricks had to be uniform in size, weight, and strength. Laws were passed. Guidelines were set. Bricks became not just material, but code. With mass production came standards. Bricks had to be uniform in size, weight, and strength. Laws were passed. Guidelines were set. Bricks became not just material, but code. Not all industrial bricks were plain. Victorian architects used them decoratively. Arches, columns, ornamentation. Bricks weren't just structure, they were style. From smoky chimneys to garden walls, bricks became the signature of the modern city. Durable, affordable, familiar. You could find them in every alley, every station, every school. Today, we build with steel, glass, and carbon fiber. But bricks never left. They still line homes, still warm chimneys, still build walls. A 9,000-year-old idea, still holding strong in a digital age.